You are listening to the Business Finance Matters podcast, the only podcast that brings a clear voice and signposting to those businesses seeking access to finance. In partnership with the Guild of Business Finance Professionals, each episode will be hosted by me, David Gross, and by him, Trevor Peary. Collectively, we have almost 80 years of market experience. No jargon, no fluff, just real conversations that we hope will help business owners make smarter financial decisions. So let's get on with the next episode.
There is this world of finance out there. I have shareholders that I sit down and present. David and I do a quarterly presentation to them and talk about the business and the growth. And they cannot believe that we have managed to raise the finance that we've managed to raise against fixtures and fittings and fit outs.
And they should believe it though, Robert. They should be sitting there and believing it because it's there. It's happening everywhere. But
why don't they know about it?
Exactly.
I think that's the frustration.
Exactly.
There we go.
Here ends the podcast. So here we are, Trev, season 3, episode 1, back in podcast land. So let's get on with it. Who we got on today?
But mate, this is a belter. It's Robert Schogger of Metspace London Ltd. They are a managed office solutions provider. We are delighted for our Sicilian friend, Mr. Nash Giardina of Ideal Leasing Finance. They've had a long-term relationship. It's 20 plus years these two boys have been getting on with each other, and it's fabulous. Very much looking forward to presenting this one, Dave.
Yeah, it was a good interview, wasn't it, Robert? And I think he covers off an awful lot, especially for those business owners that are listening, and especially those business owners that are looking to get some type of finance to support growth. I think Robert pretty much covers it off.
You know, it's dangerous out there. If you get this wrong, it could really jeopardize your business. You have to just make sure that you're getting proper guidance when it comes to raising debt finance. So we'll cover that off in future episodes. But what we're trying to get over here is what is possible from getting it right.
Perfectly put. Let's get on with it. Let's go and speak to Robert.
Welcome, Robert. Nice to see you.
Hi, Robert.
Hello there. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you for coming, Robert. We love these podcasts, especially we've got business owners on for all the obvious reasons, because your story or a story shared by people like yourself is hopefully a story that can be listened to by the business owners. So you're born in Stanmore. By the way, do you know another famous person born in Stanmore?
Oh, it's not you, is it, Gross?
No, famous, right. I said, not infamous.
Oh, right.
Billy Idol.
Really?
White Wedding.
Really?
There we go.
I like doing my hair like Billy's.
Anyway, so born in Stanmore, 1970. Yes, still of a young age, as we all are, and left school reasonably early, and then it was what, straight into business, or was there other things on the way?
Straight into business. Left school at 17. I just didn't get on with education. I guess in this day and age, in sort of this world, I probably would have been diagnosed with some neuro-linguistic or diverse learning problem, whatever it is, that I couldn't concentrate. But back then it was just didn't get on with school. And the options back then in those days were you either go to university, you get your degree, or you go out and you cut your teeth in the world, become an apprentice or a junior. I think they used to call it a gofer. Did they? Go for this, go for that.
Yeah, tartan painting and all that malarkey.
Yeah, correct. So I had learned those things. So that's what I did, and I was very lucky in that my first proper job was with a company that it's not around anymore just because of the time, effectively. But they were a firm of commercial property surveyors, and I worked for a man whose work ethic was first class, and I'm incredibly grateful because I think role models, that sort of stuff in young people is really important. And he taught me valuable lessons. I was first in, last out of the office, and as well as do the photocopying and collect the dry cleaning and go and get sandwiches, he also made me sit down for an hour a day at the beginning and go through my routine, how many calls I had to make. It doesn't matter what time of the day it was. I had to get through at least 10 calls a day to 10 different people. And that was what I had to do at the beginning to get learning how to work hard and get on with it.
And forgive me, Robert, is that important influence in your life still with us today? Or
Yeah, very, very
Good.
much so. Ironically, he became a client of mine at Metspace.
Oh, wow.
So Metspace is this managed office provider, which we'll talk about later. We provide sort of all-inclusive floors to businesses. Like, instead of taking a lease, they'll take this managed product that we created. And I've always stayed close to him and his team, and they were looking for office space, and we managed to find them some space, and they became a client of ours, which was
good.
I mean, it's a dream for me because I was managed to help him and his company.
I had a similar experience. I don't know if you did, Dave, but someone very early on in my life just gave me that spark, just gave me that guidance. I never asked for it. He just took me under his wing, and whatever I learned, or perhaps shall I say haven't learned, a lot of the time I look back to him. God bless him. He's not with us anymore, so I'm pleased your man's still with us.
Well, it's important, isn't it? You say role models, and I've got a couple of kids, and I try to impart sort of what I learned, and also from growing up, had a dad that had similar sort of work ethic. He worked hard, but your name was really important, and it probably plays into what we're talking about with Nash, and I think what you guys must be doing at the Guild, because I think trust is a massive part of what we do in business. And I think that how we behave in business is as a reflection of what comes back. And this man, who I learned from, as well as my dad, was all about how you behave. Be honest, be decent, be trustworthy, even at difficult times. Face up to what's going on, and then you can deal with what's in front of you. But then it'll leave an impression on that person, and then when you come back to doing business with him again, they will remember you.
And you're right, Robert. It's not all about take. If anything, you start with giving, don't you? You start
100%.
You start to give, and then you don't expect, but I'm sure you're the same, Dave. How many times you give something, your time, your experience, your knowledge, whatever it may be, free of charge, Yep. And then you look back over time, you go, blimey, that was amazing.
Yeah, and I know we're only a few minutes in, but one thing that you've touched on there, Robert, and it's something that still is happening today, really. Call them children, call them whatever you want, but kids coming out of school these days, they come out fairly rudderless. There's very few that have that desire or want to go down a particular path, go to uni, become a doctor, whatever it is. But having got three sons myself, they're all still finding their way in life. And like you, Robert, I left school early with nothing really, didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but eventually found my feet, which was in finance, and did have that mentor. And for me, it's the attitude, isn't it? You and I both had somebody that we looked up to and thought, he's the person that I'd like to be when I get older. With yourself, you were with this company for 12 years, and got confidence, got the confidence to say to yourself, right, I can do this on my own. Is that how it kind of went?
Yeah, well, yeah, sort of. I started work with this guy. He was an agent. The job was to advise clients on the sale and acquisition of commercial property up and down the country. I enjoyed it. I worked for him in total for about 8 years. I decided I wanted a break because I hadn't gone traveling or done anything other than work. So explained to him what I was doing, and he said, go have a break. Went away, came back about 12 months later, having gone traveling, and there was a mutual client that we did business with, and he said, well, come and work for me. And I worked for him for a year, but then wanted to get back into commercial agency, so then went back to work for my original boss. So it was always, the relationship was always very solid, very safe, very honest, if you like. And I worked for him, and then I got bitten by this bug of sort of wanting to work for myself, just wanting to give it wanting to give it a go. So nobody had explained to me what that was actually like, but I did. I was with my friend David Kluwer, and we wanted an office, and we couldn't find what we were looking for. And at the time, this is the late 90s, there was a serviced office, or there was a conventional lease. They were the two options primarily. And we decided we actually wanted something in between, which was a sort of a no frills, no sort of bells and whistles, just a room with desks, with phones, with internet. It was just the beginning of that internet technology. So we wanted all that stuff. So we said there must be other people out there that want that sort of thing. So we took a lease on a period style building and we filled it with desks and phones and IT infrastructure. Had no idea what we were doing, but we filled the building and we called it sort of this thing called managed offices, Reflex managed offices. And it just turned into a business.
Did you know, I'm listening to you there, Robert. David, you'll remember Martin Lewis we had on from Evis just before Christmas. And the parallel that I'll draw there is that from your personal experience of what you wanted, you found a solution that changed into a business.
I listened to a few of your podcasts and what Martin was saying on that. And I think so. It definitely is a theme that runs through people who have their own business. I was fortunate I had this partner that shared the same vision. So if I was on my own thinking, I'm doing this, I'm on my own, nobody else is doing it, why isn't anybody else doing it? I don't understand. I might not have been so fortunate.
Yeah.
But it turned into a business and it was very much driven out of a desire to create something, if you like, that didn't exist. And I think what was odd about it at the time, I mean, you'll remember this, but back then, an SME was...
Careful now.
Yes. With black and white TV and stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you. 3-day weeks and candlelights on Power Strike. Yeah. Thank you. Let's move on.
Florence Nightingale.
Yeah, thank you.
The SMEs were treated really badly. If you were a small business and you're in a serviced office, you had a PO box, a bank wasn't interested in giving you a bank account. They thought you were dodgy.
Yeah.
So it was tough. And there were lots of like-minded small businesses that just wanted to get on with running their business, and they were legitimate and they were real. So it was nice in the early days of Reflex because we were kind of under the radar and we suddenly realized that there's thousands and thousands of people and companies like us. So it wasn't difficult once we got going. So yeah, it was good.
So that was sort of late 90s, 1999.
Late 90s, yeah.
And at this point, starting up the business, I mean, you and David, your business partner, did you have to put much money into it to get the thing started? How did the original sort of conversation start about financing the company going forward?
We put a lot of money in at the time. I can't remember how much we needed to raise.
And that was your own. But that was your own.
It was our own money. Yeah, it was our own money. It wasn't hundreds of thousands of pounds, but we didn't know anything about finance. I mean, apart from my background was property. I knew that you could go and buy a building and go to a bank and borrow money against the freehold assets, and that was it. Our first introduction to finance was there was a company called Margolis Office Environments. I knew the MD there, and we needed to furnish the building, and he introduced me to finance by way of post-dated checks.
Yeah, I like it. For younger listeners, a check is basically, it comes in a book of 50 pieces of paper that you basically say, I will pay this person X amount. You sign it, you put a date on it, and you give it to that person. And if it's today's date, do you know what? They used to have to go to the bank and queue up and pay it in. Yeah. But if the date was at some point in the future, they couldn't go to the bank until the date that was on the check.
No.
Frightening stuff. No. Go on, Robert. Sorry.
No. So we had these post-dated checks and we gave them 24 post-dated checks, for example, and it was amazing. But then obviously the risk from the person doing it was that if the check bounced, you've got a problem. So what happened was the dot-com bubble burst in 2001. Yeah. And there was this terrible period for 2 or 3 years where businesses needed to survive, but nobody knew what was going on. Access to financial worlds were in a terrible state. And I remember sitting down and saying, look, we've got these 30 odd post-dated checks because you've got 4 buildings now and we've financed. How do you know we're going to, the risk is all with us. So we told them that each check will be met upon first presentation. You've got no issues with that. Don't worry. We was as good as our word and made the payments and traded through that bad period. which was 2004, 2005. The economy started picking up again. It took a few years. But what we noticed was these SMEs, these small businesses, and there were just hundreds of millions of these small businesses in the economy. They were coming out of their bedroom, starting up businesses, or they were downsizing. They are the lifeblood of the economy in terms of powering it,
and still are to this day, my friend.
Absolutely. So what we noticed was occupancy was always 95%. What dropped was the turnover, how much money they had to pay on a monthly basis. So it was all about learning how to manage cash flow. That was our introduction into finance. How do you manage cash flow?
Yeah.
We knew we had these post-dated checks. That was the first payment. Once that was done, it was whatever was left over was what we had to run the business. And it probably wasn't until 2004, 2005 that we started seeing a little bit of breathing space between our cash flow and some profits and headroom. There was a little bit left over. And we thought, let's buy a photocopier. And we thought, I can't afford a photocopier. That's mad.
They're about 25 grand then, weren't they?
Oh, they're mad money, crazy money. And I have no idea how I found Nash, or Nash found me, or we found each other. I'm not sure the right way to say it.
We know where he's from, but we won't say any more than that, will we?
No, but he came along to finance this photocopier for us, and it's been a great thing for me and my journey in business. And it comes back to this thing, trust again. I felt like I could trust him. It felt like he had our best interests at heart. I think it's very difficult in business to try and get that across. I mean, and what we tried to do in our business with Metspace, and same was with Reflex, is, try and be thoughtful about what you do and how you behave to everyone, all the people that are involved in the machine that you interact with, all the suppliers, all the creditors, all the finance people. And Nash was that person. He seemed to have he seemed to share that approach and that vision. And the way he's explained your guild, I think if it's made up of people like him, then I think the finance world is in safe hands.
Well, can I just come back to Nash?
Yes.
I have an email here from Nash. I'll read it verbatim. I've promised Robert 50p for every time he mentions me and my company. He's going to have to mention me a lot to get a good return. Okay, where do we start? Nash. But seriously, you said earlier you don't know how you found Nash, which is a generalization. But if you look back at what was going on in those days, and I don't know about you, Trevor, if you can recall, but there was a pretty stable access to finance in terms of banks, typically where most people were still going for their lending, whether it was overdraft or loan. I've been through the sort of asset finance period and invoice finance period personally, but there wasn't a lot of intermediary involvement.
No.
So Nash, the fact that you found him, we won't go on about it too much now, but we might do later, but finding anybody in business is so key, isn't it? Whether it's the guy to fix that photocopier, whether it's the building to trade from, and it's always trying to find those important parts of your business which will ensure that the business continues to grow as best as it can. And I guess the challenge that we have, hence why we do this podcast as part and parcel of the Guild's initiative to get a signposting up, is it's trying to find people like Nash now. It's so hard because signposting isn't there, and it's even more important that we find out about Nash, another 50p, because there are so, I mean, I know we've said it before that I think the UK is the most complex business finance infrastructure in the world. It has so many products available to businesses, so many lenders, and we've said it so many times on the podcast previously, but finding someone like Nash, or as you said a minute ago, Robert, finding someone in the Guild because they have the experience and professionalism, such a huge challenge. So, with the help from yourself and certainly from other people that come on the podcast, that's what we're all trying to do today, is to get that notification out for businesses to find their Nash.
Let me cue you up with something else then, Robert. Your first foray with yourself and David. I'm intrigued. You sent David and I some notes. Talk to us a little bit about what Talking Health was all about back there in the early 2010s.
Yeah, well, so we had this company Reflex, and Reflex is, so if I just sort of frame Reflex, it's this managed office business, and we would trade out of period style office buildings like Georgian townhouses, Edwardian townhouses, that sort of thing. And that was the business model, those buildings. And we had a building very close to Harley Street that was poorly performing. It was on a street called Mortimer Street. And we had a friend at the time, 2013, I think it was, 2012. His wife is a therapist. She still works out of one of our buildings. She's a talking therapist. So she will talk about mental health problems, nothing prescriptive, but nothing clinical, but, psychologists, psychiatrists, psychoanalysts, that sort of thing. The way these therapists work, a bit like you would go and see a specialist on Harley Street, they would be working out of a room 1 day a week or 2 days a week.
Okay.
So she came to us and said, I can't find anything. I need a room somewhere. And I can't afford these Harley Street prices. Could you help us? And we said, well, we've got this building. We don't really do rooms by the hour or by the day. We do rooms on a monthly basis. And her husband said, well, Anna's got a friend, this woman. She said, if she does it 1 day a week and she finds a couple of other people to do it 2 or 3 days a week, then you'll have your agreement for somebody to take a full room for 5 days a week.
Nice.
And they can take it on a monthly basis. So
nice.
Sensible. So we did that on a room in Mortimer Street, and word got around. And then a few years later, we started filling this building. We must have had 40 odd therapists working out of this building on a day a week,
Wow.
2 days a week, sometimes renting it, some of the rooms by an hour. And they were styled like it would be your front room. It was nice. And the idea was to try and make the space that you're in comfortable to talk about your problems. So the whole idea was it's not some gringy, dirty NHS basement damp room. You're in a front room. Yeah. Nice couch, nice armchair.
Yeah.
So the therapist feels good about themselves, the client feels good about themselves, and they can talk more freely and comfortably, and they want to come back.
And the question I really want to ask, from being a businessman with David, but did what these guys and girls were doing, did that actually influence you and shape you a little bit, and thought, we're actually adding value here and giving back something to the community? Or
You're absolutely right. This business kind of felt a bit special because it felt like we were giving something back. I mean, it's weird to call mental health a business. That's the most difficult, most challenging thing.
Yeah.
What we felt was something that needed to be done, and an industry that was steeped in tradition needed to be modernized. And it could be modernized by making all the parties feel good about themselves. And what we've done since then is the business has just evolved through the therapists themselves and learning what they want and learning what their clients need.
I love it. And do you know what? Listening to you there, Robert, it reminds me of what you did with Reflex. You saw a halfway house, you saw a gap, you saw an opportunity. Well, you've done the same again, but in this time with people. Okay, you're providing the facilities. You're not yourself the therapist, but no. I like it. Right, we haven't mentioned Nash for 10 minutes, so we better get cut.
Did you know that he has an olive grove and he makes olive oil? I mean, you couldn't, a Sicilian man making olive oil.
Where's he making this olive oil?
Don't ask questions like that.
But yeah, Trev, we come on. So in terms of chronological order, your background was as it was. You got out of school, you got yourself into this job, and you moved on into as a business owner, sort of back end of the 90s with Reflex, and then Talking Health, as it is called now. Was that in addition to Reflex Manager Office?
Yeah,
so you then had two. You had two separate businesses now.
Two separate businesses. We had two separate businesses, but it was coming to the end of sort of my journey with Reflex. We'd grown Reflex over sort of since 99. It was 2015. There was an opportunity. It was nothing more than an opportunity. We actually, before we sold Reflex, we had this idea. The SME market was maturing.
Yes.
What was happening.
Yeah.
That is. Yeah, so you had the 2007 financial crisis. You guys probably remember that, with in fact Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in America,
just
with all
the
collateralized debt, which was awful. but things dipped a little bit, but then sort of soldiered on quite dramatically. And I remember we were going to sell Reflex just before the crash. A company approached us and said, "Oh, you've got this business in central London. It's really unique. It's unique. We love what you do. Would you want to sell it?" And we said, yes. The crash happened. We were gutted, but we sort of shook it off and moved on and carried on going. And David and I said to each other that if the opportunity arises, we don't care what the market is like or where we are in the cycle, take the opportunity because we were presented with it previously. So that's what we did. And we sold it in 2015. But just before then, we were going to set up another company called Floors, because what happened was we had these businesses which range from sort of 1 to 10 people, and we were losing them to conventional offices. They were taking leases or going back somewhere else, or they kept saying, "Have you got anything bigger? Have you got anything that could accommodate?" And we were, "Well, this is a mature market now. We can't help you." But you'd hear your grandparents turning in their grave. You've got people that want to buy and you cannot sell them something. So it was that moment, but we sold, and then we had a non-compete clause, which we honoured. And then in 2018, we came back into the market with Metspace.
Okay. Now, Metspace fascinates me, and I'll let David talk in a minute. I'd like to introduce Metspace by the last thing I saw on them, and Nash plays a big part in this. When I saw that Weatherbys Bank PLC, they chopped in to what I would imagine you call a case study. And funny enough, the other one's one of our guild members as well. But when I saw Nash with yourself, Robert, and David with Metspace being highlighted in a bank's financial statements, I thought, wow, that's impressive. That's really impressive.
And I'm sat here thinking, because of obviously what our podcast is all about, the financing of this growth. I mean, there's buildings involved. There's obviously furniture involved, fixtures and fittings involved. So as the business was growing and developing, you started off with your own money, then found Nash somewhere, got your photocopier. But the progression and the growth, was it putting profit back in? Was it raising capital elsewhere? Were you using the banks? Who were you going to?
The shock of 2001 and the presence of Nash in our business life, mine and my partner's, David, was the reason we never used bank finance. And I'm very grateful for it. We had a bank manager that was old school that taught us some really good, rigid lessons on how to manage cash flow. And then we had a Nash there in the background, just guiding us and advising us on acquiring equipment. His tenacity and his honesty, I don't think we would have been able to grow.
Dave. And hey, what's going through your head, Trevor? And I'm sure, Robert, to a certain extent, if you listen to the past podcast, this is exactly what we've heard time and time and time again. If it wasn't for that intermediary, where would you be today, or would you be anywhere? And can you imagine how many other businesses are out there right here, now, that can't find the way forward, and therefore are they just not going to grow, or are they going to fold?
I think you said it right at the beginning, and you said something about not wanting to go on about it. But I think that's not fair to yourselves. You need to go on about it because I got to say it's been a vital part of our growth. And the fact that Weatherbys and Arkle, you had two people coming together, or two entities, and ourselves and Nash. We started borrowing, I think it was 2009, maybe 2010, we started financing stuff at Reflex. And then again in 2018, very early on, early part of the business. And Nash was our first call and only call. We didn't try and, find different people in the market. So when Nash presented us to a bank, it was, okay, they're setting up again. Look at business. What are they doing? Wait a minute. We got this guy here that's going to vouch for them.
Yes.
Who is this guy? I mean, how do you value that? I don't even know.
You can't, Robert. I mean, what Nash will have done, and you realise this, but just for the point of the podcast and people that don't, he would have got you what I would call match fit before he even went and knocked on the door. He would have got you right. He would have. It's not a game per se,
But it is.
Or is it?
It is.
Or
You
is
know
it?
what?
Yeah.
It's a game.
It is,
You know
yeah.
what? It
It is,
a game.
is it?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I tell you.
think so.
I think it is. I tell you why. I was thinking about this the other day when you asked me, when we had a brief chat. I think the skill to what we do in transacting in business is being able to unpack something and then repackage it and present it in the way that the person that needs to receive it. And I think that is what his skill is. And it's perfect because he can tell the nuances. When somebody says something, he knows where he's going. And that's what I think it is.
Listen, if we was to stop the podcast now and just throw out the last 30 seconds, we could do no more. I mean, you know, it is, of course it's a game. But I'll tell you what, Nash is, he's your coach, he's your trainer, he's on the training pitch with you. You know, but when you're on the pitch playing the big game, he's on the sideline as well. He can't affect what Metspace do operationally or sales-wise or whatever, but he can certainly help to get you ready to take it on. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
Definitely.
Nash also mentioned that there's someone within your organisation that's a bit special outside of work, something to do with climbing mountains or something.
Simon Ferrier. So Simon, I mean, just sort of packaging it up, and Simon runs Talking Health.
Okay.
We gave him his first job from school at Reflex. And I can't remember what year, maybe 2011, something like that. So, and he's been with us ever since, and he's developed a passion in the last 6 years, 7 years maybe for mountain climbing. He's scaled Everest solo.
So to give him a proper plug, Simon Ferrier May is his name, but from what I understand, he holds a world record for the youngest Briton to climb the world's 8 highest mountains. But most importantly, he's climbed these mountains without the use of supplementary oxygen.
Yeah. Which is
Trevor,
which
you
is
run out of breath
unbelievable.
going up the stairs, don't you?
Mate, I was just thinking, I bet he's not on the Capstan full strength first thing when he gets up in the morning.
No Chitan filterless.
No, just going back to the work bit there. So you took him on straight from school. So has the pupil become the mentor now, Schogger?
He can't leave. He's not allowed. I think having people around you and with you who you can trust.
Yes.
And this comes back to the same thing. And I kind of feel I need to say this for everybody I work with at Metspace and Talking Health, that I think we've tried to have this theme running through how we are as people and behave, in that, you know, you treat people as you want to be treated.
Absolutely.
And that's that honesty thing and trustworthy thing. And I think that's why Metspace is a great company, and so is Talking Health, because
Robert, it's a great company because of two people, yourself and David. I've always believed that the culture of a business comes from the top level. It's trust, honesty, transparency.
And Trevor, at the Guild AGM the other week with Rory, who stood up and said a few words, and his business and what they do in terms of going into businesses and getting underneath what's going right, what's going wrong. But one thing he talks about is team culture.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's classic with every customer that I've worked with in the past. You know, the first thing you're doing is getting to know who the people are behind the business.
Yeah, number one.
Because that will give you a strong indication of
number one,
what type of business we're working with here, and also its ability to survive.
That's what's so brilliant. That's what's so brilliant about what you guys do and the finance world that you access. Actually, I think that is what is stood out for me. Whereas in the old days, I keep going back to the past, but it used to be about the relationship with your bank manager.
Yeah.
At some point it finished, and now the relationship that Nash has created with these lease finance companies like Weatherbys, Arkle Finance, and these other companies, they've come in and actually sat down with us and these companies, and they're talking to me about my business and what it does, and they evaluate my business based upon what comes out my mouth and not just the balance sheet or the P&L, because when you're a small business growing, you know, if you're about growth, that growth needs to be supported by somebody who understands what it actually means to run a small business.
But Trevor, we speak about it, and the previous podcast we had, which was a special edition, talks about the government asking for information from the marketplace as to what's going on, and the Guild has done that. We've put back our report. Apparently, UK ministers have summoned in the banks because they want to find out why they're not helping SMEs. I don't know why they're wasting their time. Quite frankly, the banks have made their decision about what they are, what they're not going to do, which is fine. What the Guild's trying to do, and what people like you are trying to do, Robert, is go out to business owners and say the banks aren't the be-all and end-all. There are so many options, so many lenders out there. Arkle is one that you mentioned in your experience, and I could rattle off God knows how many in the next 10 minutes, which we haven't got time to do. But it's about trying to get businesses to accept that banks just aren't going to do, unless you're a certain size, what they're wanting to do. And the government's got to accept that as well. And the SME growth and the economy has got to accept that unless businesses get access to finance, and your story is just one of many that we've shared, then we might as well just pack up and go home, because this is the backbone of the economy we keep talking about, and small businesses in particular. Let's get them the signposting to organisations like the Guild. Then surely that's a massive step forward to fixing this problem.
Yeah, huge. I think that's absolutely right. I think you're spot on. And I think the bank hands are tied. They're so worried about all these tier 1 ratios and lending criteria.
Yeah.
There is this world of finance out there. I have shareholders that I sit down and present. David and I do a quarterly presentation to them and talk about the business and the growth. And they cannot believe that we have managed to raise the finance that we've managed to raise against fixtures and fittings and fit outs.
And they should believe it though, Robert. They should be sitting there and believing it, because it's there. It's happening everywhere. But
why don't they know about it?
Exactly.
I think that's the frustration.
Exactly.
There we go.
Here ends the podcast.
Listen, as we move towards the end, Robert, I have thoroughly enjoyed what you've had to say. And do you know what? It's passion, isn't it? It's passion. We're human beings.
Yeah.
We want relationships. We crave relationships. If you can bring quality people, Simon, your mountaineer, David, your lifelong buddy from school, and our Sicilian cousin, Nash Giardina of Ideal Leasing and Finance.
Another 50
Let me
pounds.
ask you one question. Tell me what you really think of Nash. No, seriously, Robert, you've come across so well. I wish you continued success with Metspace. It was great getting in Weatherbys accounts. I've seen some of the pictures of some of the things that you've done. It's amazing.
Thank you so much for your time. It's so important for so many reasons, as you already know, and we look forward to getting this out to the business owners. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much for having me on. I was really grateful.
Okay. Take care. Bye now.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.
Cheers, Robert.
There we go, Trevor. Another amazing business owner. Great conversation. Hopefully a lot of it is clear in terms of how Robert and his business partner David has managed to move the business forward, thanks to our Guild member Nash, and thanks to him taking advice before he gained any access to finance.
Do you know, Dave, I was listening to Robert there talking. It sounds a bit strange, but do you know the hairs on the back of my head standing up? Yeah, well, thank you. Well, there are a few, but not necessarily on my head. But anyway, we won't go there. But every single business owner that we've had on has said exactly the same thing, haven't they? We're never going to be bored of this. We are going to ram it down people's throats, whether they like it or not. I know, you know, Dave, Nash knows, Robert knows. If it wasn't for that relationship, that business would not be where it is today.
Yeah,
period.
And with a lot of the activity that's continuing in our marketplace, especially those that are talking very clearly about businesses that, for whatever reason, are going direct to lenders to get their finance. Again, we cannot stress clearly enough, can we, Trevor, that please seek guidance from a business finance professional. Make sure you get a good steer, not just to the right lender, but for the right product as well.
Dave, we know it, don't we? How many times have we mentioned that finance and talking about finance, and let's cut the fluff, let's cut the jargon. It doesn't come easy to a lot of business owners to just basically say, look, I need some help, I need some guidance, I need to know what I'm doing. And this continuing proliferation of these what can I put it? Borrow £500,000, we'll do it in 5 minutes. And
I
it's
see
gonna
you're
be at the
talking
best
about the
rate in
lenders that are
town.
going direct to business owners saying, take it, apply now, get it tomorrow.
It's just fraught with danger, really fraught. And it's not just about cost, Dave, is it? If it's the right product
Absolutely.
for that business
Absolutely.
at the time, the cost is
Absolutely.
irrelevant.
Absolutely.
It's the right product.
The best
key.
fit, Trevor. The best fit is what we keep on trying to underline. But do you know what? I'd love to know if anyone can prove me wrong. But I said in the interview, I think we are the only nation in the world that has so many financing options and God knows how many lenders. Is there anywhere else in the world that has this situation? Please, can someone prove me wrong?
I'd back you up on that, Dave. We are barely out of nappies as a guild. It's a modern day guild. But if you go onto the guild website, bfpguild.org, you'll see the amount of lenders that collectively our members are working with. We're approaching 150, which isn't huge, but that is the tip of the iceberg. There are many more lenders out there. And again, I'm not going to bore people. If you're bored, then don't listen to us. But if you're interested, just remember these people, our members, are professional. They do this job day in, day out. They know the market. They get to the lenders that you would have no hope in hell of ever finding. And that's one of the
only way they'd find them is, unfortunately, the Google setup, which, as we know, is fraught with danger. But anyway, more importantly, I worked out that Nash owes Robert £26.50.
That is a bottle of Chianti. Do you know, I spoke to our dear friend Nash Giardina. He's off to Tuscany.
I wonder if he's taking a bottle of olive oil with him.
Well, I'll tell you what, he needs that £26.50.
Well, no,
there we go.
He owes Robert £26.50.
No, Robert owes him £26.
No, other way around. Listen, email sent from Nash on 27th of May, 2025 at 33 minutes past 7 in the evening, quote unquote, I promised Robert 50p for every time he mentions me. He's going to have to mention me a lot to get a good return. Well, 53 times Nash was mentioned. There we go. Anyway, let's forget that, and I'm sure the money will be coming Robert's way shortly. Okay, well, look, it was great. I'm looking forward to getting some feedback on this episode. As always, you know where to get hold of us. Where do they get hold of us, Trev?
The easiest way to get hold of us, just go onto the Guild website. It's very simple, bfpguild.org. Look at the top. There's a tab up there. You know how websites work, folks. Just click on podcast. There you go. You'll see this one and you'll see all our previous. But yeah, as you say, Dave, we're all over the place on all the social media networks that support such things. And crack on, shall we? I'm looking forward to it.
A little plug as well. We're still looking for a sponsor. So if there's anybody out there that would be keen to sponsor us, alternatively, Trevor, people can go to, as they already have done, and we thank you very much for your support, they can go to our podcast webpage.
They can. It's very simple. Business Finance Matters, but bfm.buzzsprout.com. As soon as you click on there, if you're on a screen bigger than your phone, and even if it is on your phone, you'll see on the right-hand corner, beautiful little button there, little heart, and it says support. And Dave, that is going to cost you... Well, it's in dollars because we're using an American piece of software, but it's about £2.50 a month. So if you can't afford that, if you're not interested, then go away.
Exactly.
I don't care.
It's up to you guys. If you can spare a little bit just to help us put this all together, and as I said, any sponsors out there, we'd love to hear from you. Okay, let's wrap it up.
Love that, Dave. Robert Schogger there running Metspace London Ltd. Managed Office Solutions. Check them out on the interweb. We know how that works. Him and David, his partner. I like that story. Lifelong buddies from school. Brilliant. Mentor. All the rest of it. Fabulous. But just remember, that's the result. What we're trying to reach out to, what we want to reach out to, is you business owners that haven't got a clue what to do, not just when the bank says no, but what are your options? What are your alternatives? That's what this is all about.
Good. Okay, mate. Goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye
Enjoy
from
the
him.
sunshine, and we'll catch up soon. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Business Finance Matters. If you have, then please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't listened to or missed any previous episodes, You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and basically, we're everywhere.
We are, David, and if you've got any questions or topics you want us to talk about in future episodes, then drop us a line. We're all ears. Remember, when it comes to finance for your business, you can search for your nearest business finance professional at bfpguild.org. We look forward to hearing from you and have you on board for future episodes.